Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League here at, quite of course, the Nordschleife. And today in round 3, which is basically our way to close up the first half of the season, we will drive GT4s, well, not we, but the drivers today on track will drive GT4s. We see lots of BMWs already. But yeah, 45 minutes of racing action. It will surely be interesting today. Seen lots of actions in the GT4s in previous seasons, so I'm excited for it, and I assure you that my colleague in the booth, Tim Ireland, is as well.
Of course I am. I'm always excited to see some GT4s and Nordschleife. So, yes. I wish there was a few more Audis, but our fault for giving away the M43 last year at the EWC Twitch drops. So, pretty much everybody's got one, and it's obvious that it was going to be a bit oversubscribed.
Well, apart from the fact that it's free currently, of course, so if you want to give it a try, you can try it out for free this week.
And
But yeah, it will surely be interesting still. One thing that I already talked to you about before the stream was that I'm waiting for the Alizahir drift, because so far in every GT4 race we ran at this track, we've seen Alizahir drifting the soul out of the BMW M4 at Schwedenkreuz. So I'm curious to see if we will see that today as well. But right now in qualifying, it's of course all about setting the fastest lap time. There's one of our Audis. We've got two Audis on the grid. They will be quite easy to spot with the bright green Dazzle liveries you can unlock for this car. One of the drivers, Cesco Monea, the other one, this one, Steffen Böse.
yeah, we need some M4 GT4 liveries. It's a bit sad seeing them all driving the same one.
Well, we at least have the numbers to distinguish them.
That's very true.
But yeah, a few returning drivers as well. One of them currently listed as 14th. Of course, that doesn't really say much since we are in qualifying. But that's Gok Polassa. Sure, we'll see more of him later in the stream. We also got with Steffen Böse somebody, I think he drove either in the 2.4 hours, which is, I think, 6 to 8 months ago. I can't even quite remember when it was. But he is back to it. David Toth, we've seen in a couple of races. And you will probably have seen him if you drove official races. So we've seen a very impressive newcomer last time in the GT3s. We may see another one today.
Yeah, we've got a fairly decent grid of different names from different series along the time we've been running these streams. So we know, I think, pretty much everybody in the race. How much they know the GT4s, that's another question. But I guess we'll find out over the next 45 minutes.
Well, of some of them we know how they handle the cars. We'll just...
That's true.
I mean, we are used to seeing a lot of people being very good, but I mean, if we take anything from the last race 2 weeks ago, it tells us that we can't quite trust that, does it?
Yeah, I mean, if any track is going to throw up some curveballs, it's probably going to be the Nordschleife. And it definitely has done in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, I think as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face.
That is a very good way to explain the situation, I think you could say. But yeah, the last race definitely made it very interesting in terms of the championship as well, because if we take a look at the standings after round 2, of course we still have with this one 4 more races to go, including a 2.4-hour race at the end of the season. Dominik Ladler, Bräuniger and Maximilian Dehn all within 4 points, all of them driving today, but so are Checot, Zahir and Kurzer. So the top 6 in this race. Tim Schroeder in P8 as well. I think this could be very decisive in the end.
Yeah, we've got quite a few people from the leaderboard here today. So it could definitely mix the points up a bit. But I think the Ladler-Breuninger Beam battle is one we'll definitely be keeping an eye on.
Yeah. Maximilian Dehn, I think, is... Oh, and there is CA Drift, but that is Kimi Habler. That's not Ali Zahir. Maximilian Dehn will be very interesting here today because we haven't seen him in the GT4s, I think. He was always very dominant in the GT3s, but these cars, while not be too far away of a GT3, basically just a toned down version in a way. I know technically there's a bit more differences, but you typically go from GT4s into GT3s. I think that's enough of a point set. But this might be very different territory for the likes of Ladler and Breuninger to be more closer to Maximilian Dehn.
Yeah, that is true. And I've been watching Ali Zahir on his qualifying lap, and I hope you've got a soundboard with some Euro beats queued up because he's already been doing some drifting.
I mean, so did his counterparts in the way of Kimi Habler. I'm sure they will also have a very interesting time because they're all in a voice chat together.
Yeah. Yeah, they do like to group up and be in voice chat and have a bit of banter as they're driving around.
What I'm curious about in this race is the last 2 races, basically. We had 2 groups forming and Enrico Breuninger in the middle of it, without any group to go with. How will it be
That's
today?
very true. Yeah, he always seems to be left on his own, so hopefully he gets a bit more of a race for it today, for Enrico.
I mean, he had some company last time with Jaffa Style, putting on a monster drive.
That's very true.
But yeah, we're getting closer to the end of the lap here at the Green Hell. With the GT4s, of course, we expect more closer to 9-minute lap times than the 8 minutes we see in the GT3s. So we now get onto the Döttinger Höhe on board with Kimi Habler. And in the GT4s, the Döttinger Höhe is very different in a way because you have a 7th gear, which you don't really have in most other higher class cars. Because these cars, of course, run with their street versions, differential and gearbox, therefore having the typical fuel economy gear that you then use on the Autobahn, for instance. But with Slipstream, it could be useful.
Yeah, it's they don't have the gear topping out situation that the GT3s do, and if you really want to, you can get it into 7th gear by the end of the Döttinger Höhe, but you have to essentially do it just to say you have. Whereas, yeah, with a bit of slipstream, that 7th gear could come in mighty handy.
Get the lap times coming in currently. Maximilian Dehn in 8:36. 7 seconds faster than Kimi Habler. 6 seconds faster than Dominik Ladler. David Toth, our rookie, just 16 thousandths of a second faster than Enrico Breuninger. And we also have Ali Zahir slotting in on the front row 5 seconds down from Maximilian Dehn. So, 2 things. The top 5 are all good contenders for this race already. I mean, 7 seconds in GT4 on the Nordschleife, that is equivalent to 4 to 7/10 on an ordinary track. But David Toth and Enrico Breuninger 16 thousandths away from each other on a track that's 8 minutes long. That is, I think, what you could consider close.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
But if we
I
know
mean,
anything about this race, it's that the starting position doesn't quite matter usually.
no, there is the killer first two corners, sometimes literally, to go through, which equalizes a lot of things as far as track position is concerned.
But well, with qualifying now concluded, Maximilian Dehn, Ali Zahir, Dominik Lalla, Tim Schroeder, and Kimi Harpler in the top 5 positions. Before we get to start the race, just a quick rundown on the rest of the season. In 2 weeks, we will be back to GT3s and 60-minute races in the afternoon. Well, in-game afternoon, we will still be here with you at 8 p.m. CEST as per usual, of course. But after that, we will go with the Cup Porsche, which we haven't had at the Nordschleife so far.
No, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's maybe at the minute I'd be less inclined to drive it there, but I think it'll be pretty entertaining to watch other people drive it there.
I mean, we know that a lot of people do have some fun with the car, and noticeably the ones that have competed back then in the PCCD, the likes of Kimi Harpler, Dominik Ladler, and Joachim Thunder. But in the background, you can hear some, well, mostly BMW noises making their way to the front stretch. So let's take a look at this start into the third race of the season. Of course, Maximilian Dehn, Ali Zahir, and Dominik Ladler already banking some points for their qualifying result.
It's a very handy Audi stripe so far down the grid.
That is very true, and it's the stripe that separates the top 10 as well. But we go racing in the green hell with GT4 cars, and it's side by side for Ali Zahir and Maximilian Dehn. Further down, we even see a few 3-wides, mostly BMWs, of course. Hard braking zone down into turn 1, but no contact so far. Oh, Ali Zahir taking the wide way around to get a lot of pace out of turn 2. Maximilian Dehn with the better exit. No contact this time through Yokohama S. And it's Maximilian Dehn leading the field. Further down, it's side by side with, I think that is Enrico Bräuniger in the 5 car. And behind that, it should be Cesco Moneira in the Audi. But it has been a good start for the front pack. Cesco Moneira dropping.
Great camera angles showing that we've been a bit spoilt in liveries in the GT3 racing recently.
They surely make it a bit easier to spot people, but nonetheless, so far in the top 5 group, no big change. David Toth was also able to keep his position, now under pressure from Julian Chicot though. And Julian Chicot, he has to make up ground if he wants to keep in the championship hunt. Also has to worry about Enrico Bräuniger, and he has some damage to the front right of his car. My headlight not really working as intended anymore. Behind it's Gok Polassa against Steffen Böse for P9. Having a look down the inside, but Gok Polassa just letting it flow through the Vedol chicane. And we go on to the Nordschleife for the first time this race.
Cesco Moneira had a bit of a bad start there, putting him back in 13th as the other Audi, whereas they were both in the top 10 before. I didn't see what happened, but there's a little bit of a gap between 10th and 11th. So I'm assuming there was some overtaking maneuvers going on there.
It bunched up a bit, but everybody kept it pretty clean, so...
Yeah.
Stuff that does happen at the start of a race like this. I think that's nothing that anybody would be betting an eye on. But you have a lot of time to make that up, and we already see Tim Schroeder and Kimi Harpler pushing their BMWs to the absolute maximum. Might this be the area where Dominic Ladler with his very conservative driving style will shine at the end of the race? Who knows?
Maybe the GT4 tires aren't quite as up to date as the GT3 tires, so
Oh, Steffen Böse hard hit into the wall.
oh, that makes a mess of his shiny paint job.
Well, the bigger question will be, does it make a mess out of his geometry of his suspension setup? It seems like he can continue to push.
Yeah, his steering seems fairly neutral. So there's that. That's pretty good for him.
Tim Schroeder also missed the breaking point for, I don't know if Force just emerged in front of Kimi Hapler there, but lost a lot of time to Dominic Ladler. Meanwhile, David Toth was able to build a bit of a gap to Julian Chicot behind, about a second between the two cars. But it is a very competitive grid we have here today. I think except for 2 drivers, they are all gold status. Which is a rating of, or in the 3000s.
Yeah, I think the qualifying time showed that pretty well. It was, considering the relatively small field of 13 drivers, it was pretty close. There wasn't a big spread of qualifying times.
Maximilian Dehn getting closer to 2-second gap to Alizar here. Kimi Hapler in slipstream up Kesselchen. I don't think it will be enough to make up 5/10, especially since Tim Schroeder had slightly better exit out of Bergwerk, but might get him a bit closer again. Oh, and Tim Schroeder again running very wide. I think he didn't brush the wall, but he went very wide through Bravery Curve. Or Mood Kurve.
You did, that was sure.
Got Polassa meanwhile. Oh, Cesco Monoya making a move up Kesselchen. That was very brave against Piotr Zadive. Don't see that too often. But Gok Polassa also made his way past Dennis Kurzer in the meantime and is up into 9th.
Yeah, there's been a bit of shuffling further down the field. It's good to see Chestu working his way up.
Dennis Kurzer is again putting on the pressure. The GT4 was also, of course, the car where I've seen some of the most ingenious driving by this man, Julian Chicot, last season. Where this race was closer to the end of the season. And he basically waited for Alizaya to pass him to use the slipstream on the Döttinger Höhe. So the GT4 is also a car that can be very strategic in the way that you drive it.
Yeah, I think the strategy is going to come in a little bit more later on. I started to talk before about tyres. They're not quite as up to date as the GT3 ones. So, how they wear later on could come into play, maybe. I know the drivers here are probably more used to how the GT3 tyres are wearing, so it could throw a few curveballs in.
keep coming back to the last race in the season, but if it taught us anything is that what the first lap shows as a result doesn't really, yeah, show the end result, or isn't even a real indication for it. But if we can take away one thing from that first lap, it's that Maximilian Dehn is on very good pace. And I think Dominik Lada also has closed in with Alizai, because the gap has come down to 1.7 seconds. I believe it was a bit bigger than 2 seconds earlier.
Yeah, Max Dean seems to have really stretched that out there.
I mean, Dominik Lada is also, apart from that one Nordschleife race, coming off from a good streak of great races. The RCL finale last week, he made a run from, I think, P9 he was at some point to P2.
Yeah.
The race special event, he led for a majority of the race, just before the end losing the lead to Ray. So, oh, and Dennis Kurzer, I think he brushed the wall there. Let's hope that this didn't cause any damage to that front left wheel. So, Dominik Lala is in a very good form right now. And of course, as defending champion, sure he would be happy to defend this crown.
Yeah. And he's definitely up there. He needs to, I'm sure he'll be looking to bag a few points. He's got a fairly sound racing head on his shoulders, so he knows not to do anything too stupid and just keep plucking away and bagging those points. And it seems to have worked out for him pretty well so far.
Yeah, of course, the mistake that cost him last time week, which wasn't the only, he wasn't the only driver to be affected by this. We had plenty of drivers making odd mistakes, also the likes of Timothy Fritsch, who unfortunately isn't here today, but for him it was a very atypical race as well. It was very early in the race, so he made it through lap 1 pretty well, and he's still closing in on Lisa. He lost the car a bit, and he has also collected damage to the front right. Did he just understeer into the wall there?
I will try to find if I can see what happened.
Oh, well, there's a drift already. Gap between Gokpolas and Dennis Kotz has grown to 2 seconds, so maybe there's a bit more damage to the BMW of Dennis. It's costing him time, because he was closing in on Gokpo quite comfortably for some time. Yeah, how big is the damage on Ali's car is the big question here. It seems like, especially on the faster straights, so Niglala can close in, so there might be some aerodynamic disadvantage here for the Lebanese driver. Letting the rear step out a bit every time. But it's a way to drive the car quite fast. So you don't want to oversteer, but you want to have a tiny bit of rotation through the turn. So a lot of drivers tend to use more rearward brake bias in the BMW.
His steering doesn't seem too far off central, so he's at least got that. But he's definitely getting caught by Dominic Ladler right now. Whether that's because Ladler's increased his pace or not, but he's also lost quite a bit to Maximilian Dean. And obviously has damage to his car.
It seems like everybody's holding a pretty steady pace, except for then, of course, Alizai, who's also going wide here, but so does Dominic Lala. I don't think it's the fastest to take the curb there, but these guys surely know a bit better than I do. But Kimi Harpler and Tim Schroeder, they're also not too far off. It's 3 seconds to Harpler, 5 seconds to Schroeder, and then another 4 seconds only to David Toth, who's still in 6th, who's having a pretty good debut so far. Now up Kesselchen. Can see the time dropping a lot. Might be enough for him to get close enough for the Döttinger Höhe.
Yeah, I think Dominic's canny enough to wait until the Dottinger to make his move, especially if he can see that his car's just a little bit quicker in a straight line.
Meanwhile, Dennis Kutzer must have had another incident, because not only did Cesco Monuera pass him from quite a few seconds away, but he's missing his front right fender, his right mirror, and has significant damage to the rear right of the car as well. I presume he slid a bit wide in Bärseifen, judging by the damage.
It seems a fairly safe guess, yeah.
It's an easy mistake to happen, though. Happens to the best pros out there as well. Well, especially if there's oil on the track just before that, but...
But we don't simulate oil on the track, just to make that clear.
Maybe that's just my PHX Phoenix heart bleeding a bit from the, I think it was 2023 loss in the farewell race of Audi. With both contending Audis flying off in the same corner. And I just noticed that we lost both Stefan Böse and Radoslav Pironkiewicz.
Radoslav Pionkovic was quite far behind. I don't know if he had some kind of penalty. But speaking of penalties, Cescu Monera has a drive-through to serve.
The drive-through on the Nordschleife at least doesn't hurt as much. We'll throw him behind Gok Polasa and Dennis Kurzer. But could still, if he finishes this race, pay out some points. And Radoslav in chat as well, confirming it was, he parked the car on his own terms.
That's the polite way of saying it.
I mean, different cars are not, or like, everybody has their own tastes in cars and the way they drive. We know that we have a lot of people who like the GT4. We also know we have people who don't like the GT4, because they are less aerodynamic and more slidey. But yeah, of course, hoping to see him back for the GT3 race in 2 weeks and for the 2.4 hours. And maybe for the Cup race, because if you didn't know, Radoslav Pionkiewicz is hosting a Porsche Cup League, the Porsche Cup Sprint Series on RENNSPORT. If you go to the League tab in the app, you can check this out. They've completed their first race this, I think, Wednesday it was, and will have the second round next week, Wednesdays. So if you like the Porsche Cup, that might be something you want to check out. Where also the likes of Kimi Harpler
no excuse for him not turning up to the Cup round, then, is there?
That's a very good point you make there. Guess it's a must join for him. But yeah, Dominic Lal wasn't quite able to attack Ali Zahir this time around on the dirty area, but it got him closer. Now closer to 5 and 6/10 of a second. Maximilian Dehns lead, meanwhile, 15 seconds. See if Cesco Monera comes into the pits this time around. Takes a bit of grass there, but that's no big issue in the Audi. It's quite stable at higher speeds. And no, he stays out, so he's gonna take it a bit later. But maybe it actually makes sense. Gok Bolasa 24 seconds behind. Oh, and big damage to that car. So, yeah, if he builds up a bit more of a lead, he can actually stay in 9th after doing his penalty.
Yeah, it looks like Gogpo's been doing some fairly extreme weight saving.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Either that or he taped up too much of his radiator and needed a bit extra cooling.
But both Lassa and Kurz are coming in, I can see on your screen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fairly obvious why Gogpo's coming in. He seems to be missing the front of his car. Oh. Dennis Kurtzer is also getting a little bit of a repair. Can't see so much damage on his car, but it could all be at the back for all I know.
Where and when will Dominic Lala take the position? I think that's the big question here in this fight. I think with the damage Ali Zaya has, it will be very hard to increase the pace. And it also doesn't seem like Dominic Lala is pushing the car to the limits. It doesn't seem like he's really burning the rear tires. It all seems very planted, if you ask me.
Yeah, he seems pretty in control, which we've come to expect really from Dominic Ladler, and his driving's generally pretty smooth and looks nice and in control. So if he can keep his tyres in good condition, he'll be setting himself up. He's probably looking at the gap ahead of them of the 17 seconds to Max Dean and thinking, I'm probably not going to catch him, so third or second is as good as I'm going to get, so I might as well bide my time and make one good move rather than 10 reckless moves.
Yeah, of course, in the meantime, the gap behind has grown to 4 seconds to Kimi Hapler. Tim Schroeder, another 3 seconds or 2.5 seconds behind that. Oh, and picking on the grass a bit there. But, yeah, it's very equal between the cars. It's just like the tiny difference they have in lap time is starting to add up a bit, except for the top 2 cars. David Toth in 6, 11 seconds down from Tim Schroeder, but still 6th in this grid is very respectable because he has the likes of Chico and Bräuniger behind him, who are 2nd and 4th in the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. It's by no means a bad performance. And I'll look forward to seeing him in a few more races if he can turn up. That will be great.
But this time it could be very interesting. 5/10 going into Bergwerk. Now with a good exit, maybe Dominic Ladler would actually be in a position to make a move into Mukova. If he would do so, that's a different question, but it's certainly a very good sign for him that he can at least think about stuff like this.
22 minutes left, so we're just past the halfway point of the race. Done 3 laps so far. Well, we're on the 3rd lap.
I think it will be 7 or 6.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a drift there from Dominic Ladler going through Moodcore.
Yeah, I think they both had a bit of a synchronized drift going on there for a little second.
I mean, we know that Ali does that, but for Dominic, that's a more rare sight in many cars. One thing that is very different about the Nordschleife compared to most other tracks in my experience, or the way I feel about it, is following another car on the Nordschleife is actually very interesting. Whereas if you drive in Spa, which are great racetracks for instance, but if you just follow a race car there, it's of course kind of boring because you want to make a move. But on the Nordschleife, you have to be a lot more aware of the car in front. Because you don't really get an over... Oh, and Dominic Ladler spinning on the curb and hard into the wall. I didn't see that coming.
I only did because my replay is a few seconds ahead of yours. But yeah, that was just got his back end a little bit too far on the curb there. And round he went, which I was definitely not expecting to happen.
It didn't suddenly snap on him, so it kind of built itself up over time, but yeah, that changes a lot in many ways. We'll have to see if we can continue with it. This now puts Kimi Hapler into 3rd and releases a lot of pressure from Ali Zaya, because he now has a 6-second cushion to Kimi Hapler. But
yeah, he doesn't have to push anywhere near as hard now, does he? He can back off a little bit and make sure that he coasts home and banks some precious points.
it certainly is very outside in a way, but even apart from that, it's a very easy mistake that can happen. You get onto the curb there, the curb has a lot less grip, and with the way these cars are built, where you don't really have the downforce on the rear like on the GT3s, doesn't push you down as much, so it just kicks you around, and then once you get off the curb again, you have a small jump on the rear. It's no way to save it, to put it simply. But yeah, both RRT drivers up a position with that. They just have to keep it clean themselves, no?
Dominic's steering seems to be fairly straight, so he seems comfortable enough to carry on with it. His car just looks a bit mashed up at the front.
Question is, will Kimi Hapler be able to close in on Alizar? Currently it doesn't quite look like it, but I'm still not sure about the damage on Alizar's car, but if it's something that amounts over time, so you wear the front left tire a lot more every time, it could also change a lot in that instance.
Yeah, true. If it's going to compound into like a tire wear imbalance, that can cause its own problems. Kimi is also not a million miles away from Tim Schroeder, who their paces have been, well, they were within a tenth for the last lap, so they're very close together, which makes the gap perhaps bigger than it might otherwise seem, but It only takes a little mistake, and that gap will very quickly shrink.
Indeed. Maximilian Dehn still very lonely up front in a way. But he's well in control so far. Oh! And nearly does the same thing as Dominic Ladler.
That was you. You cursed him that time, not me.
I'm taking the blame for it, but...
Your curses just aren't powerful enough. Max Dean's last lap was an 8:35. The next fastest lap on track, you'll be very unsurprised to hear, is Ali Zahir doing an 8:42. So, Max, pretty quick. I think we can fairly definitively say that.
I think that's not up for debate even, but... yeah, again, very, very weird result. Doesn't seem to bother Dominic Ladler too much, the damage he got from that incident. So he's hanging on, even though he's losing quite some time to the leaders, but it should be enough to stay ahead of David Toth if he can keep the pace up like this.
Yeah, he's got 13 seconds back to David Toth, which is an alright bumper for now. Until he comes around and does a clean lap, I can't really say too much about his pace, besides just avidly watching the deltas.
For the standings, this would also mean that Maximilian Dehn is taking the championship lead by quite a distance, with 52 points to Dominic Ladler's then 44 if it were to stay like this, which of course isn't guaranteed at all. And Ali Zahir also moving past Enrico Boeniger for third. Julius Rico and Enrico Boeniger both losing out quite a bit because they're in 7th and 8th. Something you wouldn't quite expect from the both of them. Tim Schroeder would leap up
Dominic
to 5th.
Ladler doing a few kind of grass-cutting maneuvers recently. He's had a couple of bad corners. It's definitely costing him some time.
I think that's also the result of the damage in well, I mean, it seems obvious, but with the Nordschleife, when you get damage, for instance, like he did at Brünchen, you arrive at the triple right-hander or Wehrseifen 4 minutes later. You got used to the damage, but you don't know how the car will behave in that corner. So you don't really have time to get used to anything like on a 2-minute or 1 minute and 40 lap time racetrack.
That is very true, yeah. Yeah, in a track like the Nordschleife, where you're basically driving by feel a lot of the time, then anything that messes up that feel suddenly makes things a lot more complicated.
Well, there was a big drift from Ali Zahir through the mood quo, so I think my goal for today is completed. But yeah, just a reminder, you shouldn't throw away a solid P2.
No, that's fair.
And Kimi Harper is down to 4.7 seconds. I presume we will have 1 lap to go after this. Might be tied whether it's 2 or 1.
Yeah, I mean, Max Dean, at Max Dean's pace, he's got yeah, you might be able to get 2 laps in.
in doubt he even has the chance to decide, because nearly 30 seconds ahead of Ali Zaya. That is a big
That is
lead.
very true, yeah.
So if he's in the plus of like 15 seconds or something crossing the line, it's his decision to do one more or one less. We've seen in the past he goes for the one more most of the time, but on the Nordschleife it's very different.
Yeah. He's definitely in control of this race in more ways than one. So it's all up to him. He'll be on a power trip right now.
Oh, and again, a big drift into Galgenkopf. He's not taking it easy on the car.
He's having a bit of fun.
Seconds. But if we have 2 more laps, this might become very interesting between Zahir and Hapler, because Hapler is closing in quite rapidly now. And coincidentally, especially in the left-hand turns, so maybe the front right of Ali Zahir is struggling.
Max Dean only doing one purple sector this lap. Ugh. Is it even worth it? Coming across the line to a almost pedestrian 8:38.
But
Put some effort in, Max. Come on.
We will have 2 more laps, so can't slow down that much. 2 more laps for Kimi Hapler to close in 3 seconds. By the pace he's done that last lap, should be able to. Of course, it's not so good news for Dominic Lala, because the gap to David Toth has been shrinking. Only 10 seconds separating the 2 cars. Enrico Bräuninger has also been closing in on Julien Chicot.
The gap between Tim Schroeder and Kimi Hapler has been fairly fluctuating, I'd say, in the last lap. But overall, Tim Schroeder did almost 4/10 faster than Kimi. Now, mathematically speaking, that's not enough for him to close the gap. But if Kimi can see that gap keep dropping, then it's going to put pressure on him a bit. And he's at some point going to start battling with Ali Zahir.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether these two would start fighting, or if they see Ali Zahir in front and think, yeah, we can go to P2 together.
Yeah.
Depends on how much worth they put into that RRT tech of theirs.
That's very true.
But yeah, Kimi Hapler is just gaining so much in the right-hand turns as well. So it's very hard to tell whether it's just of tire management because of the damage. Guess we will only know after the race in the Discord.
Enrico Bräuninger's last lap was 6/10 faster than Julien Chicot, which, if the pace stays the same, will definitely half the gap between them. But that will bring Enrico within a second of Julien Chicot.
Yeah, Döttinger Höhe on the last lap, that will be the deciding point for pretty much anyone. You want to be within about 8/10, 5 to 8/10, getting onto the Döttinger Höhe. Alizé is gaining big time though through Schwedenkreuz, but with the way he's attacking those fast corners, I'm not really surprised.
3 cars all in the same shot there, so the gap's starting to get into the kind of business territory. Tim Schroeder's within 2 seconds of Kimi Harpler, who's still about 3 seconds from Ali Zahir.
Enrico Bräuninger down to 1.5 seconds as well.
And if there's one thing we know about Tim Schroeder, is that he's a cool, calm and collected driver when it comes to overtaking.
Especially when he sees a fellow Dutchman in front of him. But yeah, I think P2, P3, P4 very open to anyone.
You can't see it from that camera angle, but there's already been some Tim Schroeder flashing. I think he's making his intentions very well known.
Oh, drifts onto the curb though. And if we've seen one thing with both Dominic Lada and Maximilian Dehn is that this can very easily end the race for you in the BMW.
Yep, that's very true.
Big question, of course, do you want to fight? Or do you want to fight for P3, or do you want to push Kimi Harpler towards Ali Zahir to have a chance on P2? Because in W will just go with him into P3.
Yeah.
But the other question is, does Tim Schroeder think that far?
If you wait till Dottinger Hua, he could literally push him closer to Ali Zahir.
But the gap is still 3 seconds, so far Kimi Harpler didn't make up this much time this lap, but last time it was the upcoming section that gained him a lot. The downhill from Carousel up until, yeah, Dottinger Höhe basically. Can he repeat that? Enrico Bräuninger 1.3 seconds now. And those two, they both want the points for the standings, I can imagine. Would bring Enrico Bräuninger at least a point closer to Alisa again. Well, 2 actually. So he would end up on 37. But let's keep an eye on the delta for Kimi Harpler. It's still 3.1 seconds.
Yeah, he seems to have pulled away from Tim Schroeder as well in that section. Is Kimi just really fast there?
He seems very, very consistent through it at the very least.
Because the gap to Ali Zahir has definitely shortened, and the gap to Tim Schroeder has widened. So I think he's got a special technique going on.
And made 4/10 in the last 10 turns about. But I think it's something that we talked a lot about in the M2 race. Of course, there everybody in equal machinery. Here mostly as well, except for Cesco Moreira and the Audi. You will see people being very strong on different parts of the track.
Yeah.
And maybe Kimi Harpler is just very good in those flowing sections while Ali Zahir takes his pace out of the very fast corners where you have to be very, let's say, precise with the car to not lose it, but to also go far or go through very fast.
The gap to Kimi opening up a little bit down Dottinger Hohe. It's staying almost 3 seconds. Ali Zahir losing a little bit of time, presumably through a bit of damage. But Tim Schroeder now, 2 seconds behind Kimi, has all the work to do all over again.
Cross the line with 2.7 seconds in between the two of them. And Tim Schroeder also 2.2 seconds. So fairly equal spacings between the cars.
Enrico Bräuninger just on the very limits of getting any kind of drag down Dottinger Hohe, so he's not really getting too much overspeed from that. But he is now within a second of Julian Sacco.
Was the car sideways there through Tiergarten? Looked a bit like it.
I wouldn't like to speculate.
Now we only have one lap left in this race, but this doesn't mean we are done for the weekend, because tomorrow racing resumes at 8 PM on this channel with, at this time, not a completely different event, since we will drive at Spa for 2 hours with hypercars and GT3s, so it's more of an endurance event and multi-class, but other than that, should be a bit more similar to what we've seen today compared to the touring cars at Road Atlanta we had 2 weeks ago. So if you don't want to miss that, and if you want to take part, because you can drive the Porsche 963 and the, I think it's the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 for free at the moment, you could just hop in and join the fun. Or of course, watch this live stream, because we will be broadcasting it as well. And I'm sure it will be interesting to see those cars together on track again, because we didn't see them like this in quite a while on Spa.
No. Oh. Julian Sacco making a bit of an error there, and Enrico Bräuninger is now right up behind him.
Just running a bit wide, but that's all Enrico needed.
But yeah, because for the race tomorrow, Gogpo Lassa is in Twitch chat right now. Hi, Gogpo. And he's already planted his flag well and truly in the hypercars for tomorrow. I know they're a bit intimidating, especially on a longer race, but decided to take the time and get some practice in, and I'm going to say completely confident they'll definitely have perfectly fine tyres by the end of the 2-hour race.
Yeah, it will be very interesting on strategy, because we had 2.4-hour races, of course, as well with the hypercars. You can do very long stints on them as long as you don't flat spot them. Because then you won't have a fun time for, if you do too early in the race, about 2 hours. So, yeah, it will be very, very wary. But also in the meantime, Kimi Hapler cut down the distance to 1 second.
Yeah, Tim Schroeder is 3 seconds back now. He's been absolutely left in the dust in this last few sectors. And Kimi has obviously got his eyeballs on Ali Zahir ahead of him, and that's pushing him to drive a little bit quicker.
I wonder if he just waited for this, basically, and now he's using the tire advantage he built up.
Maybe.
But he definitely seems in a very good position. Do you think, I mean it's a very far stretch, but do you think Ali Zahir has the move in mind that Julian Chicot pulled on him last season?
It's possible if he's within the right distance. He does seem to have a bit of a power disadvantage compared to Kimi. So there'd be risks involved about whether he can get the amount of overspeed he needs, but he's probably equally worried that if he doesn't
Oh my
do
god,
that...
Ali Zahir hard into the wall at Mood Kurve and his car flying into the air.
That was a tumbling car and a half.
Well, that was very unexpected. He hit the wall quite hard and then... But Dominic Ladler, is he gonna get them?
Oh, that's an interesting point there. Because Ladler is 7.5 seconds shy of Ali Zahir right now, but it is tumbling fast. Ali's car obviously not looking in the best of shape right now. I can see parts of the roll cage.
I mean, we now got Kimi Hapler and Tim Schroeder in second and third pretty much set. But
yeah,
Ali
sure.
Zahir's car, it's not driving well. Dominic Ladler is closing in at a staggering rate. And David Toth is only 2.4 seconds behind Dominic Ladler with a pretty clean car. And then we also have Julian Chicot and Enrico Boiniger nose to tail into the final few sectors of this last lap of the race. Meanwhile, Maximilian Dehn is getting onto the Döttinger Höhe.
Dominic Ladler can already see Ali Zahir's car at certain corners. The gap is already down to 2.3 seconds.
Oh, but Dominic Ladler now goes wide. And all of this brings David Toth closer and closer and closer. And Ali Zahir loses the car again going into the jump.
Dominic Ladler overtaking him in the air, which not something you see generally in GT racing.
Not really. Maximilian Dehn goes into the final two turns and onto the start-finish race. The only car, I think, to be completely without issues. But congratulations to Maximilian Dehn on another victory in the Nordschleife series. Kimi Hapler and Tim Schroeder will make their way to second and third, but can Dominic Ladler defend from David Toth, and will Ali Zahir be able... he should be able to stay in front of Chicot and Breuninger, who themselves are separated by about a second. So if Breuninger doesn't close in quite a bit now, he won't have a chance at P7.
No, he needs to get a little bit closer so he can get that full toe down the Döttinger. Unless he gets a really good exit.
It could have been a big fight between Ladler and Zahir for P2. And now David Toth around the outside of Dominic Ladler into the grass. And David Toth steals P4 from Dominic Ladler. in the final few turns. Dominic a bit stronger on the brakes, but I don't think there's much he can do. And David Toth comes home to finish 4th on debut.
Which in this field is pretty impressive.
It's very impressive. Dominic Lola still after his crash coming in 5th, and Aliza here. It could have been P2, but yeah, he lost control of his car and a lot of time. 6th, and Broniger and Chico actually went in to be quite close. They will finish nose to tail. Less than 2/10 apart after 45 minutes of racing.
I think Enrico Brodigo there would be wishing for just 2 more turns.
It would have all he needed. And Cesco Moreira on his way to come in 9th. Also not his dream race, I presume, but not too bad either. So,
Nope, the lone finishing Audi?
the lone finishing Audi indeed. If we just quickly run through the now updated positions, which means Alizaya dropping down to 6th. Then we will have a very different looking final standing score. Then it will be again Maximilian Dehn on 52 points, Dominic Lala on 44, so these two unchanged, but Enrico Breuninger stays 3rd in the standings on 35. Alizé and Tim Schroeder share 5th and 4th with 33, Julian Chicot on 30. So it bunched up a lot of people.
Yeah, which we like to see, for sure.
But yeah, again, a very odd race. If there are too many odd races, it becomes the norm, doesn't
it? I prefer to think of it as once again the Nordschleife delivers.
Yeah, that definitely. It wasn't an action-packed race like last time, but it sure was very interesting to follow the action.
As a plea to the drivers out there who may be watching the Twitch, can you not do like all the overtakes at the same time? Can you space the battles out a bit more? Then maybe we can talk about them properly. That last lap was crazy.
It was. But yeah, I think in the meantime Cesco Moreira finished his race and of course is on his way to finish in 10th. So I don't know really what I could use as final words except for turn in tomorrow, either to drive or to spectate. I'm sure it will be very interesting. And yeah, any final words from you, Tim?
No, it was another great race. Thanks for everyone who took part. Even if you didn't make it to the end, thank you. And I hope you'll join us either racing or watching the stream tomorrow for the 2 hours of Spa.
Well, with that said, we wish you a great evening and a good night. So,
sorry, jumped the gun there.
All good. See you tomorrow, and until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.